is my pleasure to bring to you our very next guest, Larry, also known in the New York area as I Am Queens, a college student at the moment, but I have a feeling that we will be the ones getting an education today. Larry, welcome to the Fireside Chat. We're glad you're here.
Thank you, Elton. Thank you all for having me actually be on this Zoom call with each and every one of you. I'm just honored and incredibly grateful and thankful that I'm able to not just take up space with you all, but to be able to share my story and to also do everything that I can to highlight not just myself, but other young people in the civil rights movement, including young Gen Zers. I'm very, very grateful and honored. I'm thankful, and just thank you for just shining light on not just my story, but what happens in the child welfare system.
You're no longer in Queens, New York. You're in Greensboro, North Carolina. Talk about that, please.
Yes, Elton. So I grew up in Southside Jamaica, Queens, New York City, and I had been in New York for about 23 years of my life. Everything that I know, known demand, is in New York. So this was one of the most scariest moves and transitions of my life. I embraced a culture shock where I've had at least 7 anxiety attacks because of not just how slow it is down here compared to New York, because New York is such a fast-paced state. But I had to really much embrace a new environment, which is something that wasn't able to click to me right away. And it was hard because I didn't ever think that I would get into an HBCU. And I still can't believe I'm at an HBCU. When I got accepted, I honestly declined the first time. I didn't decline with the school, but I declined with myself because I asked myself, how can I afford this? I'm an out-of-state student. You know what I mean? I still am having trouble to afford college right now. I'm applying for scholarships, I'm applying for grants, but I realized that God is really making a way. And I have a 3.84 GPA. I'm an honors student. My major is African-American studies with a concentration of entrepreneurship and a minor of political science. What I would like to do with that is multiple things. I really want to become a public figure. And I feel like I've been able to do that all by myself while living in an emergency situation. And that emergency situation was, of course, foster care and what I've been through, including the age out process and including going into 23 foster homes, group homes, covenant homes, homeless shelters, men's shelters, children's centers, anything you can think of. I was able to go through that, and school was like my biggest lifeline. Education has always been my biggest lifeline. I always said to myself, you know what, I don't know how I'm gonna pay for it, but it's gonna work. You know what I mean? I just gotta continue to trust the process. I gotta continue to put my blood, sweat, and tears into my craft. And I feel like that's what I've been able to do at my HBCU. Coming to North Carolina, it was very, very hard for me to adjust because the students that I was basically being around, I felt like they didn't really know like what it was to actually, be a freedom fighter. Because, when I was meeting them and as I'm getting ready to engage with them, I realized that it's a certain way I can't talk the way I was talking in New York. And it's more so like there's certain things they're not exposed to. So when I first came down here, I was like, oh my gosh, like, they're looking at me crazy because I don't have a car, because I don't drive, but they don't know my story. So then when they ask me questions like, oh, you don't drive, you don't have a car, you know what I mean? You don't go to the gas station. I'm so used to going to like the delis, the bodegas and stuff in New York. And I just told them, I was like, you know what? I'm not from here, but I'm gonna treat this as if it's my home. And they were just like, how are you so quick and able to adjust to different environments? Like, did you want to come to North Carolina to thrive? And I told them, yes. I said, I felt like coming to North Carolina, I felt like I need to leave my neighborhood. I wanted to leave my neighborhood really because it was a lot of toxicity that I've seen with my own eyes. It was like really, really rough and tough growing up in Southside Jamaica, Queens. Towards the end of like when I was actually born, it was kind of like the middle and the end of the crack epidemic. So still to this day, I would come out of my foster home and see people on the corner, whether they were selling drugs, and there would be like crack vials on crates. Like it would be a lot of like drugs and alcohol that I would be like exposed to. So coming to an HBCU made me thrive. Coming to an HBCU made me really feel blessed and honored to be here, to be around all Black people, Indigenous people, people of color, immigrants, undocumented immigrants, like, and even Asian people. Like, I just personally feel like wherever there is an injustice at my college, I need to be a voice. While I've been at this HBCU of North Carolina A&T, I've been an e-board member of and I'm the political action chair of the NAACP organization. On top of that, I've also been a TMCF scholar, a Thurgood Marshall College Fund scholar, where I actually received a $10,000 scholarship to pay for this semester because of my grades and being an honor student. I got accepted for study abroad in Dublin, Ireland, that I did get the acceptance, but I just still don't know how I'm going to pay for it. But I'm just going to continue to be patient. And another thing is being at North Carolina A&T State University. I've been the first person in my government of foster care, like my foster care agency of ACS Family of Services, to actually attend an HBCU. So in foster care, a lot of the kids that age out, or a lot of the kids that grow up in foster care and go into school after they turn the ages of 18 to 21, some of them really don't go to college. I have actually broken a generational curse before I even have graduated college yet. So being one of the first in my basically like government agency of foster care, I'm the first one to be able to attend an HBCU. And I'm a first generational college student as well.
Wow, congratulations. I mean, I love hearing all of those instances of success, and I know you're far from done. I know you have so many more things that you want to achieve, and we'll get into that just a little bit. But I'd like to go back to the real reason why you also go by the moniker I Am Queens, and your community in Queens, but more specifically your family life growing up. I'd love to know a little bit more so people can kind of get a window into the foster care system that you experienced.
Yes, sir. So my life started at the age of 2 years old. At the age of 2 years old, I was taken from my mother and I was put into foster care. My mother, she was battling a lot of drugs, substance abuse, a lot of escorting, and she was doing things that she shouldn't have been doing. So for a very long time when I was a kid, I had foster parents and I felt like I had the enemy in my ear, just telling me that my mother was this bad person and my mother did not love me. My mother did not care for me. You know, she just left me out to be dead. Like it was a lot of psychological manipulation that happened behind the scenes that included caseworkers, attorneys, like family legal attorneys, and even superintendents and supervisors. Like, it was just a lot of stuff that was happening behind the scenes. So apparently what I was told as I got older, and it's in the paperwork too, that when I was 2 years old, my mother had left me in an abandoned building by myself. And I was in the abandoned building by myself, but she told her next door neighbor to watch me. What I didn't know is that my mother had told me that it wasn't an abandoned building. It was just a building that was like for sale that she was living in. So she had the top floor. She was renting out the top floor. So that was her apartment. And the first floor was like somebody who just moved out, but we're waiting for somebody to move in. So it was kind of like an open room. So the first floor is basically where I was staying in. And apparently it was an abandoned building because nobody was living there on the first floor, but she had the lease for the second floor. So at the age of 2 years old, I was put into foster care in the Administration for Children's Services, called ACS. My first foster parent was Miss Ventura Armstrong, the best foster parent I've ever had in my life. She became my adopted mom. But before she became my adopted mom, she put in paperwork for me to be adopted at the age of 5. At the age of 5 years old, when she put in that paperwork, the paperwork did not go through until I was at the age of 8 years old. So it was like a 3-year wait span period for that paperwork to be approved for me just to be adopted. While I was living with this foster parent, she taught me etiquette. She taught me hospitality. She taught me how to give up a seat when you get on an MTA bus, on a public transportation train bus. You give up a seat for a Black woman. You give up a seat for an elderly person. She taught me how to iron my clothes. She taught me how to wash The biggest thing that I loved about her was she was Caribbean. She was from Jamaica and she was from Montego Bay. And what hurt in my soul was that my first foster parent, who became my adopted mother, she had me when she was like in her late 70s, mid 70s. So she was like a grandma. At the age of 11 years old, my first adopted mother, who was my first foster parent, passed away. It hurt me because she was the first foster parent that took me to daycare, that signed me up for school, that took me on school trips. It was a lot of memories. While I was living with her, she was a foster parent until she adopted me. So until the adoption paperwork pulled through until at the age of 8 years old, that's when she stopped getting foster kids into her home. While I was living with my adopted mother, though, I was experiencing a lot of sexual, physical, and emotional abuse from my adopted mother's family. And that took on like me when I was like the age of 7 years old, way before the adoption paperwork had even came. And it was something that I never thought I would be exposed to. And I never thought would ever happen again. And it was more so like I had to stay quiet about it, because if I didn't stay quiet about it, then somebody basically put their hands on me. So once my adopted mother passed away, that is when I encountered a total of 23 foster homes, group homes, covenant homes, children's centers, men's shelters, runaway homeless youth shelters and centers, to then age out with just a bus card, which is a Metro card in New York City, that is $275. Get kicked out of my foster homes with garbage bags, sat on pedestals, sat on porches, sat on benches in parks. I was homeless at the age of like 21, 20 going on 21. And I was only homeless for about like at least 7 months. But in the beginning of my homeless stage, I was couch surfing. From couch surfing to then being able to sleep on a Brooklyn bridge, to then being a frontline activist. And I didn't care what anybody was telling me. I felt like I had to put in hard work. I felt like, you know what, even though I'm homeless and I'm couch surfing and I'm living in a shelter and I'm living in a covenant home and I'm living in a group home, and I don't care. I'm not going to let any of this define me. But if it does define me, I'm still get my education. I'm going to still do what I can to be about my bag. I'm still going to do what I can to see what I could do to like be able to uplift other people and teach them the importance of lifting as we climb. So while I was encountering those 23 foster homes, group homes, children's centers, and anything you can think of, I've had to be able to not just learn how to save myself, but be able to help other foster care youth in America, especially within my government agency of ACS, stay alive. So a lot of my siblings that I encountered with in foster care, a lot of them came from worse situations than what I came from. Like my father wasn't ever in my life, and my father passed away when I was just 17 years old. I didn't find my mom until I was incarcerated for standing up for what I believe in. That was on the front lines. And like my story is like very different from other foster care youth stories that I've encountered with, that are my siblings, my brothers, my sisters, whether they identify in different sexuality preferences, whether they're trans, whether they're queer, bisexual, gay. I just took in somebody as like my own. And it sounds crazy, but like literally when I was in all these foster homes, I've encountered myself with foster care youth who are not with me today. Like literally, people have died in my arms, to suicide, to being able to not be accepted by a foster parent because they're trans, to being able to not be accepted by a foster parent because they don't want to go to school. They want to be on the streets. They want to do drugs. They want to be able to do things that it was like they didn't have the mentorship for somebody to help them and get them a driver's license or get them a birth certificate and things like that. So I just want to say that like what I've learned being in foster care is that young people, not just like myself, but young people across America are being marginalized, are being put down. And when we go to the streets to find work, we can't even live there. When we go to like a fast food job, we don't even have an address to put on our application because we don't even know if we're going to be staying in this foster home for 6 months. Anything can happen. And a lot of the times when I was in foster care, I was always told that the foster homes I would be going to was respite. So respite means I would only be there for temporary. Temporary turned into a long time, then temporary turned into a foster parent telling me, I can't take care of you anymore because you're too old. I need a baby. I can't take care of a 13-year-old. I need somebody that's 5 years old. Then on top of that, another thing that I had to experience was humiliation. Lots and lots and tons of humiliation in foster care. At the age of 7 years old, that's when I was in school, and I was actually in elementary school, and it was always parent-teacher conference. Unfortunately, I didn't have parents that came to parent-teacher conference night to follow up with my grades. So I would have a caseworker, and I would have a family attorney. That was a legal aid attorney in family court. And it was kind of very humiliating for me being a baby because they wasn't discreet with everything they did. So I remember being in class and my caseworker would come to class and be like, hey, I'm just here to check up on Mr. Larry. So my teacher would be like, okay, class, hold on. There's an adult here. We gotta, I gotta step out and everything like that. But it would be no discretion. It would be, hi, I'm here with child welfare services, child protective services. Could you imagine the other kids in the class just looking at me like, wow, like you have a caseworker here? You know what I mean? Some of them didn't even probably know what foster care was, but they were just like, the way that lady said it was like, she was basically like a cop or something. Because I remember being in class and my classmate was like, is that a cop? And, it was just very humiliating because I grew up in foster care my whole entire life. And this followed me even in high school and still to this day in college. Caseworkers, family legal aid attorneys, they have always came to my parent-teacher conference. It was the most humiliating thing I've had to go through because still to this day, they would never be discreet with it until I aged out, which is where I'm at right now in college.
While you were living in foster care and experiencing this and experiencing it from your siblings, did you feel like there was no voice, that you were not being heard? Did you feel like the rest of the world was moving on and not paying attention, not caring about any of the things that you were trying to voice?
Yes, sir. Yes. Elton, that's a deep question because I still feel like that still to this day. Because I feel like the purpose is not about me. It's not bigger than me or bigger than us, but my part is a very small part. And that's kind of like where I want to touch on. My part is a small part of the work that is to be done. And I think we can only be able to move forward if we all can come together. Like we can't be divided at all. And to answer that question, I still do feel like that still to this day because I've had people who I looked up to in the civil rights movement who knew my story without me having to really say anything because of the way I was dressed, because of the way I smelled. Like you can tell that this youth was homeless because like he didn't take showers. He didn't, it wasn't like I was going around asking people for money. That's not what I was asking people for when I was homeless. I wanted resources. And that was very, very hard. But there were people that I encountered with that had the resources and reparations to help not just me, but other young people in the civil rights movement, other foster care youth that were aging out homeless and anything you can think of. And it was more so, I didn't feel like I was being heard or my voice was being amplified. I just felt like power is something that it seems like I can't ask for. I'm just gonna have to take it. And I felt like being able to do that, it put me in a position where like, it made me feel scared because it's like, I don't want to take nobody's spot. I want the baton to be passed down to me. Why is it that, I'm organizing protests, rallies, press conferences, large demonstrations, performing civil disobedience in the name of, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Elijah McClain, Rashad Brooks, Sean Bell, Amadou Diallo, Tatiana Jefferson. I was a young activist and an organizer being homeless and living in a homeless shelter and living in an abusive foster home, getting arrested because I was standing up for what I stood up for what I believed in. But what hurts is the burnout because I'm still going through the burnout now while being at A&T. And the burnout you're dealing with so many different egos. And it's very, very scary because you are dealing with people who you have to give homage to who have been here before. And I always have been big about that. But for some reason, it scares me because oftentimes I would hear people say, the young people are the future. The young people, we need to invest in them. The young people, we would have to let it be known that they are the next generation and they are our future. We need to invest in them. I mean, the future relies in their hands, right? because they know what our new world is going to look like. I heard this when I was a kid being in the civil rights movement. Young people are literally out here putting their lives on the lines, getting megaphones and blowhorns, standing up for what they believe in, organizing large demonstrations, but you just do not see us. So meaning, like, I said to myself, I was like, okay, why are people talking about what to do for young people when they're not directly talking to young people? That was like the biggest thing for me. And it was more so like, okay, if young people are the future, if young people are the next generation, if young people have to be invested in, it sounded like lip service. And it sounds crazy because it was like, where I came from, I said to myself, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to depend on nobody else to get up and do this for me. I don't care if, I'm basically walking with a cane or I'm in a wheelchair. I'm still going to stand up for what I believe in and never take no for an answer, even if it's going against another person's opinion, but also being respectful about it, because that's the biggest thing that I'm so big upon. Another thing I want to say too is that engaging with other young people to get them involved into this movement is very hard, because I've had young people come to my face and tell me, well, they say we don't vote. So it's like, if we do vote or if we do get involved, we're still wrong. Either way, we're wrong. And it's kind of like, it sounds really crazy, but like, it sounds like to me that like, there's no way to win for young people and basically able to coming into not just the civil rights movement, but to at least get their voices heard. Because like, it's a lot of young people that I've encountered with, and they're just like, you know what, Queens, you've been out here for us for so many decades. You've been doing this since you was 8 years old. Give it a break, because it's like, they're going to keep saying the same thing. Politicians are going to come into our communities. They're going to do things for the photo op. They're going to do things for things that they shouldn't be doing, but just give it a break. Like, stop trying, and I didn't take that well. I took it as, you know what, it's probably going to be hard for me to have an army behind me, but maybe if I go to another community where I'm not from and an environment that I'm not exposed to and bring the movement down here, it would probably wake a lot of people up.
Thank you for being so open about your experiences at different levels, whether that's in Queens, whether that's in college, whether that's on the protest lines as well. I'd like to talk a little bit more about your connection to UpTogether and how you first connected with us through the Black Lives Matter Fund, where UpTogether partnered with several organizations to kind of make the unrestricted cash investments to individuals and families, and without requiring them to pay it back or accrue more debt or anything like that. Do you remember how you learned of UpTogether, and if you care to share how those cash payouts were used at that time?
Yes, so I was actually organizing a lot of rallies and protests for George Floyd, but it was more so I was also organizing a lot of large demonstrations for Nina Pop, Ryan Milton. There were a lot of people that were a part of the LGBTQ community that were trans, that were dying at a rate that was younger than the age of 30 years old. The $1,000 fund, when it came to my account, I was living in a homeless shelter. So what I was using the money for was multiple things: to pay off phone bills, to get laundry done, to get a haircut, to get basic necessities, because it was so hard for me to get a job at the time. The money also was used, because that was $1,000, for clothes. It was also used for deposits too, because I had to renew my permit at the time. And I remember I had to pay for my permit. And it also was put towards my legal documentation. So I needed to like get social security card, a birth certificate. I had to get a passport. When I aged out of foster care, I aged out with nothing. So it was kind of like I had to get my whole life together. It's kind of like aging out to nothing. And it's kind of like new age slavery. And it was kind of like, that's what I used the money for, was just for positive and good things. I learned about UpTogether though, because I decided to take it upon my time to find out if there's a way where young Gen Zers like myself can be compensated for just, not just like using our voice, but like to use the gift that God has given us and see how we can be able to help and bless other people. I believe my love with other people is unconditional. I do things that I don't look for nothing in return. And when I looked at UpTogether, I just seen that there was like a Black Lives Matter fund that was opened, and I applied. And what I did was I just put my whole story, and I was just like, you know what? at the time, it was hard for me to do that because I had and they were telling me, they were like, oh, you know, you need to stop doing things for young people and stop doing things for foster care youth. And I felt like it was the enemy. But basically, I was told that, you know, my story does not matter because there's other people that are being shot at. There's other people that are victims of, you know, whether it's gun violence, whether it's manslaughter, whether it's sexual assault. But like basically, there's police brutality, anything you can think of. But basically, I was told that my story didn't matter because somebody else out there is going through 10 times worse, which I agree. Somebody else out there is going through 10 times worse. But what I didn't realize is I let that negativity sink in my brain, and it made me feel desensitized, and it made me feel dehumanized. And I also want to share too that at the time, I didn't really know how to believe in myself. And I still have trouble with knowing my worth and believing in myself. And with the funds, I was able to put myself first and put myself first where I was applying for colleges and I had to pay for college applications, like deposits and stuff, whether it wasn't for housing, but just to pay to apply for a college. I used that money for just many different things, for food. I didn't have food stamps at the time because I didn't get approved. I had to wait on the Section 8 list, which I'm still on the Section 8 list since the age of 17 years old. And it's kind of hard when you are on the Section 8 list because you're a one-man household and you don't have kids. So it's kind of like you're being discriminated. And the crazy part is people don't look at foster care as an emergency situation, meaning like I'm an award of the state and I'm a ward of the court, and my tax and stuff is like zero. Like everything should be zero because I didn't grow up with two parents. So when I go to college to like do a college tour, to a visit to a college tour, stuff like that, they always ask me like, oh, well, you know, you got to take out loans and everything like that. And I did take out loans, but I feel like I shouldn't have had to take out loans just because I'm an award of the state and I'm a ward of the court. And it's kind of like my foster care agency should have helped me to pay for school. So that was kind of like how I learned about UpTogether.
Seems like you have that selfless gene in you.
I've been selfless my whole entire life, where to the point I didn't realize it until being at A&T and being in a slow environment where it's not fast paced like how it is in New York with 24/7 chaos. It's very peaceful down here, and it was hard for me to adjust to that. Where there's a will, there's a way. And I want to be able to just create an organization, whether it's a nonprofit or whether it's not a nonprofit, but just something that's dedicated for foster care youth, for them aging out. I don't want them to age out with just a bus card like how I did. I don't want them to age out with no money, just like I did. I want them to age out with a birth certificate, a passport, a social security card, a driver's license, a permit. I want them to age out knowing that they can get accepted for school. I want them to age out with scholarships. I want them to age out with grants. I want them to age out with affordable housing for the rest of their life. And I feel like in order for me to be able to make these dreams come true for others, I have to put myself first. And that's still hard because I've never been used to that. Nobody in my life has ever taught me how to put myself first. I'm still learning. It's very hard because when you don't put yourself first, it gets worse. And I wish somebody would have told me that, because it has gotten worse for me, where to the point I've been selfless for my whole entire life that I battled with rejection, and it goes into people pleasing. So I still to this day people please other people throughout my life, not just to look for validation, but because I literally don't realize that I have a life to live on my own, because my whole entire life, I had to worry about saving others. I had to worry about putting my life on the line for others, getting arrested for others, getting spit on at protests for others. I was condemned and denounced for my own homosexuality in the civil rights movement. And that's something that I still have not been able to share, because it's hard to be able to share that, because at times as a young person in the civil rights movement, your trauma is being capitalized and elevated by those that are in positions of power in our inadequate government institutions. Young people like myself are scared to share their stories because they are scared that if they share their story, that people will literally capitalize their trauma to elevate their platform. So of course, when we go to churches, when we go to schools, when we go to our educational recreational centers, we're being kicked out. because our voices are not being heard. So we're doing everything we can, but when we go to the streets to find work, we can't even live there. So really and truly, where can we go? I just want young people to not just learn that they need to be fully embraced, but I really believe in like foster care youth power. I believe that there needs to be activism dedicated for foster care youth. In my life, I've never like been able to encounter with, but I would love to discover other youth in America that are fighting for foster care youth to get the reparations and resources that they deserve. Foster youth, like housing, is human rights. Like housing rights is human rights, and LGBTQ rights are human rights. Foster care rights are human rights. All of this is dedicated into basically letting me know, at least, that we have a job to do. Like, this is so scary for me because if the cycle is not broken and the cycle is not ended, there's going to be more kids that are going to be put into foster care. And the crazy part is, foster care is really not the solution if you really think about it, because we're ripping away children from their families. The children are being put with government. The crazy part about all of this is that you're dealing with a band-aided pipeline. If these foster care agencies are about what they are about, and they are about adoption, they are about reconnecting the children with their biological parents, then why was I used as a check? Because I kid you not, that's the capitalization of trauma that foster care parents have done to me and my siblings. They have made thousands of dollars off of us. There were times where I had to eat TV dinners. There were times that I would have to eat watermelon and ramen. There were times that I would have to be literally kicked out with garbage bags. There were times that I would live in a foster parent household, and the foster parent would have their biological family and make food, home cooked meals for them. The foster parent would make home cooked meals for their biological son, daughters, and stuff like that. And I was stuck eating something that you would never give your child. And my biggest goal that I would love to end off with on who I can lean on, being able to lean on the younger generation that's coming after me, the younger generation that is younger than the age of 24 years old. I want not just to be their voice, but I want to invest in them, because I believe that emotional support is really what they need. Quality time is really what they need. Acts of service is really what they need. It don't hurt just to show somebody compassion. Oftentimes we judge, but sometimes I feel like there's always a way where we can help somebody. It's just a matter of how badly we care to help.
I thank you for your purpose and your goals and just all of those just inspiring qualities that you possess, and your ability to want to channel that down to others and to the next generation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Elton, and have a good day, everybody. Thank you so much.